Hey Les,
Hey, Ange.
how you doing?
No, you're supposed to say, how are you?
How are you? You see how she tries to boss my life? How are you?
I'm doing good. I
Good.
always say I'm doing well because that's the grammatical way to say it, but I'm going
Oh,
to say I'm doing good.
I'm doing good. Okay, very good.
Man,
You look good.
that doesn't even sound right. I take that back. I'm
What?
feeling well because
Oh
I'm doing good
Lord.
is not grammatically correct. Here
Okay.
I go.
Here I go. Here I go. There
Here
you
I
go.
go.
There you go. What is it? There I go.
Yeah.
Pretty baby, you are the soul who saps my control. Such a
Okay.
funny thing, but every time I'm near you, I never can behave. Okay, that's it. You give me a smile and then I'm wrapped up in your magic.
All right. That was the singing portion of this episode. What episode is this? Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Black Boomer Besties from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
Angela and I just have to do our silliness to begin because we're happy to be here and happy to be broadcasting again.
Yes, broadcasting again. That sounds so like
Official.
formal. Yeah. But I guess we're at the end of season 2.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
actually, it's what? This is an extra episode that we put in because
Maybe.
we knew that we wanted to end the season with just the two of us.
And
We
like you've
can
said
make it if
before,
we.
give the
Yes,
people what they want.
give the people what they want. Give it to the people. Um, yeah, so we are happy to bring you just the two of us for our final episode of season 2. Um, we decided that season 3, ooh, is gonna be so juicy,
Yeah.
so juicy. We're gonna go there in season 3. We are
Yeah,
gonna go
because
there.
season 3, we're going to devote to controversial subjects and topics.
Controversial, a little taboo, a little risque, maybe.
We're going to rip the band aid off.
We're gonna rip the band-aid off. We are gonna rip the band-aid off. We may actually have to put it in the fans only section. You never know how deep we're gonna go, but that is our plan for season 3. And
Hmm.
so yeah. So Les, what you been up to?
Well, funny you should ask.
Yes.
No, I'm happy that the month is almost over. We're
Yeah.
recording this episode in April.
Mm-hmm.
And as you all know, that April is organ donor month. So, me being an organ donor, I've been doing quite a bit of press about my donation. So, I just finished a really insightful webinar with the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus. And they have a series of webinars, and this was the final one um, for the month about organ donation and equity and diversity in donation.
Mm-hmm.
So I, along with a few of the organizations that I belong to, we sponsored with Sharing Network also.
Mm-hmm.
So we sponsored this, excuse me, this webinar, and it went really well. So that we did. And then
Yes.
Omari and I were featured on a network news station.
Yay. That was so awesome. That was
You
so
know,
awesome.
the funny thing about it, so the cameraman and reporter came to the house. And one of the things that I love, in addition to just sharing information about organ donation in general, is that me being a outgoing, kind of a type A personality,
No.
I'm dragging poor Omari along with me to these,
Who is not that kind of person?
so he is getting more used to speaking on camera and speaking in public. And I like that part because he's showing himself that he's able to do it.
Right, right.
And he seemed so cool and so chill.
Yeah.
But he tells me that he says, Mom, the only way you could tell is that I start sweating. So when he starts mopping his brow, so I saw it there when he was on camera. And then our township actually issued a proclamation to us. So that
Yeah.
was another opportunity where Omari and I were supposed to go up to the town council meeting and receive this proclamation. It turns out that I got caught up at work and couldn't
Right,
get out of the OR. So
right.
Omari had to do this by himself.
Yeah.
And ahead of time, I convinced him to attend with me by telling him, don't worry, you won't have to say anything. I'll do all the talking. When it turns out that I wasn't going to be able to attend, I'm frantically texting him, prepare something to say. I'm sorry.
He did great. He
He
really,
really
really
did.
did great. Yeah. It was so funny because I love that they played the video
Yes.
that your um, company did,
Hmm.
and so people were referring to him by name, like yeah, like Omari said, and like
Yeah.
Omari, and he just it was like effortless for him. It was so he came on. He was like, well, I'm not a man of many words, but oh my gosh, I was
I
so
liked
tickled
it.
watching that. Yeah, that was
Hmm.
really awesome.
So yeah,
Um,
so being that the month is over, it's kind of cool. I can get to relax and slide into the spring, which is my favorite time of year.
yeah, and I'm happy that we are going into May with um, a lot of openings in our calendar to plan our trip, our getaway, because my last uh, play of the season is over on Sunday the 30th, and it's been amazing. So, I've been working on The Color Purple at North Carolina Theater with some amazing performers, and that has been just really tremendous. And it closes on April 30th. So that is the last of four performances that I've been working on doing wig design and wig styling. And
Yeah, I mean, I know
yeah,
that the crowd has really been receiving you
we've
guys
had
really well. Sold out
sold
shows,
out shows. It's
and
so
you've been doing your thing
cool.
with
I've
the
been
wig
doing my
designing,
thing.
lady.
It's so guys should see what goes on backstage. It's so
But
funny.
Ange, you've also done a little bit of set designing too.
Well, I don't know if I would call it that. I just had a moment where uh, Celie is actually scratching Suge's scalp. Right? She just helped her to bathe, and there was just this tender moment, and I asked the director if we could have the actor not be in a wig for that, because you know how I feel about that intimacy that we have as Black folks around grooming and scratching our scalp and greasing our scalp and so on. And I asked
Hmm.
him if we could please do that without a wig on, because I just thought it would be inauthentic for her to have a wig
Hmm.
on and kind of pretend.
Yes.
And he said, well, let's give it a try. And he liked it, and it's in the show. And every time I look at it, it's so touching to me because it just speaks truth about how we connect. Because that it was really around that moment that Shook started to see Celie as someone who was beautiful and salt of the earth and really connected with her, which is something
Hmm.
that I believe happens around some of our hair rituals. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so that was great. So not set design,
But
but
no, 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 no.
I
I
did.
wasn't actually speaking
What were you
about
talking
that.
about?
I
What?
was speaking when you said, when you saw a piece of fabric that was on the
Oh,
set, and you said, wait a
so
minute,
show. Oh
that
my
fabric is
gosh.
a little too modern for this setting. And you actually went and procured a more appropriate fabric. I was referring to that.
Oh,
That
okay. I'd
set
forgotten
design.
about that. I'd forgotten. Well, so sometimes I just can't let things go, and
Yeah.
so yeah. So there was
Okay.
something that I just thought it wasn't appropriate for the the timing, and it was just kind of manufactured this commercial looking African print,
Yeah.
and so I did. I told mentioned in one of our production meetings that I didn't think that that would really resonate well with our audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and got some fabric from a friend of mine who owns she's from Tanzania, and she owns a clothing and accessories shop that was close to the theater, and I went
Mm-hmm.
by there, and I'm like, look, I don't have a lot of money, I just need it for the, and she actually donated this fabric. Well, it's on loan to the theater, and so I went to pick it up, and as always, whenever I go there I have to buy something, so I bought a fabulous dress that I wore for opening night,
Uh,
and so it worked out really beautifully.
is that
Yeah.
the shop where you used to sell your hats?
No, no,
Oh.
it's not. This one is called Nashona, and
Mm-hmm.
she has two locations in North Carolina. But look her up, Nashona. Her name is Lillian. She has beautiful fabrics. To me, they're uncommon. They're not kind of the. Sometimes, if you're really into Ankara fabrics, they start to look the same. It's the same print that's kind of distributed in different locations, but her fabrics are from Tanzania, and so they do look very different to me, and so
Mm-hmm.
I love her stuff, and whenever I go, I can't help but buy anything. So anyway, so yeah, so that
Okay.
was great. So we're going into May with a little breathing room. I'm
Yeah.
working on my coaching program, and we have a big trip coming up.
I know we
Yes,
keep talking about it, but it's still unplanned. So
but it's
we're
happening.
going to work on it. It's
It's
happening for
Okay,
sure.
it's happening. And I have
Okay.
to give a shout out to my son Isaiah. He's turning 21 in May. I can't even believe it. My wash belly. That's what Jamaicans say for their last child, wash belly. So Isaiah's turning 21, and I'm going um, to the West Coast for an internship, and going into the senior year of college. And so that's kind of hitting me. Oof, that's
Mm-hmm.
hitting me like, wow. It's hitting his siblings too. Like they can't believe it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what's up.
Yeah.
So I brought something to you to talk about today, and thank you for saying yes.
Yeah.
Um, and it is a TED Talk um, by, I said to myself when I wrote this morning, I did my morning writing.
You
I'm like,
already?
and
You did your morning writing already?
I did.
Wow.
I
You were up
did.
early.
I was. My dog woke me up,
Yeah.
and I didn't have enough time to go back to sleep in between. So um, I want to make sure I say her name properly. So let me
Well,
just
I'll say her
wait.
name
Can you
properly.
go?
It's Chimamanda
Mm-hmm.
Ngozi Adichie.
Thank you, thank you.
She's a Nigerian author,
Mm-hmm.
but as most or all authors are, she's more of a storyteller.
Yeah.
I see her as a storyteller than an author. She's a professor, a writing instructor. But what's interesting about Ms. Adichie is that she speaks in a way that's so relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that you picked up this TED Talk of hers. It's not a new one.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty common. I looked it up and it's had about 35 million views.
Million views.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and she did this talk 15 years ago about the danger of a single story. And you all, it'll be in our episode notes so you can listen to it. It's not very long, less than 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But what made me think about when you pointed this out to me as a topic for this episode is that, Ange, over the years, you and I have talked about the dangers of a single story
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
without giving it that title, but
Yeah,
it's something that we talk about all the time.
it is. It is.
So, listening to this and then just thinking about the way that we speak in some of the conversations that we've had,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be bring up a good conversation.
Yeah, I do too. A lot of things. I For several reasons, when I listened to it many years ago, it resonated for me. Just for those of you who have not are not of the 35 million people who have seen it. Just in summary, what she talks about is that when you have a single narrative of a group of people, a place, a point of view, even, that it can be very dangerous because you are just thinking of people either, most of the time when it's a single story, it's a negative story, not all the time. She also talks about the fact that the stories are told, these single stories are told by whatever group is in power. And so they have the power to define how millions and millions of people see a group of people, right? And we'll give you some
Mm-hmm.
examples as we talk about this. And so she just kind of points out some, I think, really insightful uh, things that I think all of you will remember for years to come about how we see others. Some of these stories are about how we see, quote unquote Africans, right? The dark continent, we think of corruption and starvation
Or
and
I know the dark continent is something that Africa's been referred to, but
mhm.
so many people think of Africa as a country.
Yeah, that too. She brings
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
But so to have these stories told and retold by whatever group is in power, they start to define these people, and so that's what the talk is about. And one of the reasons that it really resonated for me, well, there's several reasons, right? one
Mm-hmm.
one is she talked about being from a middle class Nigerian family. Her father was a professor, her mother was an administrator. And as is typical in that country, you have helpers, right? Same in Jamaica when we had helpers. And people in Jamaica call them maids and so on, but we were not allowed to use that language in my home. They were helpers. And so she talked about a houseboy, is what the term that's used, that she only knew his single story of being poor.
Mm-hmm.
That was the story she knew of him, and she couldn't think of him in any other way. And when they visited his village, and she saw what his family was like and what they were doing and so on, it showed her that she had had this single story about people who were of different social class than she was.
Mm-hmm.
This single story about who they were, that it was defined by their poverty and not by their the crafts that
Tenacious
they
work
knew.
effort or
Exactly.
mm-hmm.
Or that they had fun, that they didn't all want to run into the city, or all the things like that. So it's not a kind of uh, you know, there are aspects of it, this that are black and white,
Hmm. You
but
mean black and white as in racial?
black and white as in racial,
Uh
because
huh.
when I talk about the group that is in power, defines the story, um,
Hmm.
for the most part across the globe, it's white folks who have the power to define the story, right? Because she talks about, you know, when the story starts. If you start the story of what happened in on in America, if you start the story with arrows and you don't start the story with the invasion of the native people and them being murdered and so on. If you don't start the
And
story
colonized.
there and colonized, if you don't start the story there, if you start the story with them shooting arrows, you get a very different impression of what truth is, right?
Hmm.
So the group that starts the story is the group that has the power, because they can propagate that story. Oh, these barbarians were shooting at us, so we had to blah blah blah.
Hmm.
Versus we came in and infected, brought disease, and so on. It's, you get
Yeah.
a very different story
Sure.
of this. So in that regard, it is kind of a dominant story, a dominant issue. But when she talks about Fide, who was the houseboy, and even when she talked about her going to Mexico and having this impression, because she had lived in America for a while, of Mexicans being these people who only want to come to America, they want to
Hmm.
take our jobs, and having that impression of Mexico and Mexicans, and then going there and having a completely different, but she went there with this point of view about them. And the same thing happened to me, maybe not as drastic as that, but when I went to Mexico for 4 months to work when I was at JP Morgan, you know, to see these, I worked and lived in Mexico City, and it was this amazingly beautiful, art filled,
Yeah.
family focused, um, technology rich.
And that's something that we never
We
hear. And this was
never
20 years
get.
ago, you when you were there or
Yeah,
more. But
yeah,
but it's we never hear about those parts of Mexico.
exactly,
Um,
exactly.
or what people call third world nations.
Right, right, right. So anyway, I just thought that it was a perspective that was worth talking about and sharing with our audience, so they can kind of investigate
Yeah.
what perceptions, because stereotypes are not untrue, right?
And
They're
that's
not
just what I
untrue.
was going to add. I was going to say that some of the harm
Mm-hmm.
in the single, what she actually Adichie is referring to as the single story,
Mm-hmm.
is that it creates a stereotype
Right, right.
that, while true, it's an incomplete
It's
picture
incomplete.
of a
Exactly.
people, of a story, of
Exactly.
events, and things like that. And
Exactly.
then we need to step back and think about what harm may be done
Mm-hmm.
by
Mm-hmm.
seeing a group of people or an issue in just a singular way.
Yeah,
We are
absolutely.
looking at a single close up view of
Mm-hmm.
something that is multi layered,
Mm-hmm.
multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you do yourself some harm by not having a complete story.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
I would like to talk about a little bit, and this is something that you've spoken about, and this is an area of expertise for you, is diversity, because we
Mm-hmm.
are talking about diversity
Mm-hmm.
and
Absolutely.
seeing issues and people in diverse ways and not single ways,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
diversity in the workplace, place.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when you were at your company for
Mm-hmm.
many, many years, you
Mm-hmm.
worked in that space, and you, one of your missions was to point out the benefits of a diverse workforce versus a single workforce. And in your case, it wasn't necessarily a white workforce in diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Very often, it's dominated by Southeast Asians
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in a lot of the technological spaces. So,
Mm-hmm.
you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I think one of the um, positions that I was able to bring to some senior folks that actually heard me was, um, it comes back to the single story. I just didn't frame it like that at the time. But in thinking that it's just about numbers, right? You're just counting how many of this type of people you have, how many black folks, how many Southeast Asian folks, how many women, how many white males, and doing the count and thinking that you are hitting your diversity markers by the numbers. But also, the inclusion part came is in what way you're making these people feel like they belong, right? That this space sees them, right? And then the other part of that is in what ways do you see them, right? And one example that I brought up is this was they had a program at Cisco at the time where they had reverse mentoring, it's called. And so
What is that?
they had like middle level managers mentor executives around diversity,
Ooh,
right? And
okay.
so the idea was that it was the person who was in these diverse groups who had the expertise and brought that expertise to executives at the company.
Mm.
And one of the things, and so I was mentoring at the time. He's long gone, but he was the head of global sales. And one of the things that I brought to him was that you can't just say, okay, these are black folks, and so like me, I'm a Jamaican, right? I've spent a lot of time in America, sure, but I know that it, in some circles there is tension between Caribbean folks and African Americans, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, you can't just assume that, oh, Angela's black or this person is black, I'm going to send them into to Atlanta and work on accounts there just because they're black. You have to get to know people
Mm.
more deeply than just what they look like on the outside. It's
And
not
how did he
enough.
receive that?
Um, he was blown away. Is
I
what
would think
happened,
so.
and it became something that he talked about in one of the big global meetings that
You're
are held
kidding.
in sales. Yeah, because you know sometimes, and let me just say this. Here's an aside, one of Angela's asides, and I'll come back. Is that sometimes you're put into situations where you are the expert and you have to step into that. You have to own that role that you have. And I hate to use this term because, but you have to lean in to that position that you have and fully embrace that and not think about, because there were times, oh, this guy is 50 million levels above me, I have to be careful. Then I'm like, no, I'm mentoring him. And so there are
Mm-hmm.
hard truths that I'm responsible for sharing with him, because it is my role in this relationship that we have in this program. it's my responsibility, and to hold back would be doing a disservice.
That's what I was thinking. You
Yeah.
might have some fear or some trepidation or some self-doubt of your ability to do this. But what I often think is, if I leave this encounter
Mm-hmm.
and not step into it,
Mm-hmm.
then one, I'll not have done my job.
Yeah.
And two, the other person will not have benefited from the
Exactly.
knowledge or the expertise that I bring to the table.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a missed opportunity.
It's a missed opportunity.
And then to take it to another level, I believe that our talents are God-given.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
believe that they're obligatory.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I don't want to disappoint the God that I believe in.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
he's given me an ability, as
Not only
simple
the
as,
ability, Les, he gave you the
but the
ability,
obligation.
and he put you in that room. He put you
Yeah.
in that place.
Yeah.
He placed you
Yeah.
there to show up. So when we talk about boldness, and it's not about jumping out of airplanes. It's not about, leaving your job or things like that necessarily. We're talking about things like this. Like, you have some God-given gifts that you are responsible for sharing with the world.
And it's funny, the way that I look at my work, I believe that I was only supposed to be an anesthesiologist. I was not supposed to be an internist or a pediatrician or any of those things. And how do I know? I encounter on a regular basis how many patients actually can tell you that it was their anesthesiologist that made their operative experience notable or special.
Yeah, few.
I can count many instances where people are appropriately nervous. And, I look them in the eye and let them know, I'm here for you.
Right.
I promise you, I'm going to take care of you to the best of my ability.
Right. Well,
I tell them that if I wasn't here, I could be taking a nap. I could be eating lunch. And I tell them that. I say, I'm here for you.
Right.
So I promise you, I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah.
And when you look someone in the eye like that and give them your word, because most of the time people are more afraid of the anesthesia because they feel that when you take away their ability to control the circumstance, Lord knows what's going to happen.
Right.
And I do assure them. So I'm just saying that I bring something to my work that's different because I believe that, I was gifted this ability.
Yeah.
And it's my obligation to, I tell mothers that come in with their children, that child is my child while I'm in the operating room. And when I get them to the recovery room, I will hand them back to you.
Wow.
And I often tell people of my experience being a mother of a child who has been ill and had health challenges. So that gives them another piece of assurance that they've handed off their loved one to me.
Right.
And they're in good hands.
So, folks, that's an example of bringing your gifts, sharing your gifts.
Sure.
Because, Leslie, I don't think I've ever, not that I've had a lot of opportunities to be in the company of an anesthesiologist other than you, but I know that I have never encountered an anesthesiologist where I barely heard them speak their name.
It's true. When I donated my kidney, I told you, I actually wrote to the chair of the department. Yeah. It was an awful experience. Yeah. I didn't go in letting them know that I was an anesthesiologist. And the anesthesiologist that came into me, he was horrible. He said about 2 sentences to me. He said to me, "You're going to go to sleep and you're going to wake up."
Wow.
like I was a third grader. And I'm
Jeez.
like
Wow.
thinking, what the is
Mm,
this?
mm, mm-hmm,
I did
mm-hmm.
only right before I started going to sleep in the operating room minutes later,
Right.
did one of the surgeons let them know that I was an anesthesiologist. And I remember hearing him say, like, oh, I didn't know she's an anesthesiologist.
Mm-hmm.
But it was an awful, I mean, relatively speaking,
Right.
it was, from what I've heard, the typical experience,
Yeah. Yeah.
What is that?
Right. Right.
How many people donate a kidney? How many people go to the operating room? That's not
Mm-hmm.
a typical thing. That's not
Yeah.
like going to the bank.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't otherwise know what's going to happen. And what if I went in there fearful? I
Right.
was. I mean,
Yeah.
because I'm a patient now.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
I'm just saying that I want to bring a diversity of experience to the anesthetic.
Community.
Exactly. It's not that single story that we put you to sleep and wake you up. There's a
Yeah.
whole lot of
Exactly.
sauce that goes in there.
Exactly.
But here's something that I just want to circle back, that I was thinking while I was listening to that talk,
Mm-hmm.
is that Miss Adichie mentioned that people are vulnerable to the single story narrative, especially children.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily to agree that it's
Mm-hmm.
specific to children.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think about the news reports
Mm-hmm.
every night. I don't watch the evening news. I don't watch local news for
Mm-hmm.
that reason, because in my mind, they offer a single narrative of different events,
Yeah.
of crime, of who the criminals are,
Mm-hmm.
poverty,
Yeah.
social situations. There's so many things that in our media we are fed constantly
Yeah.
with such a narrow single view of circumstances
Mm-hmm.
that it really takes a sophisticated listener to discern and understand that of what's really happening, that we're not getting the full picture. I think
Yeah.
about my mom listening to the stories that she hears and likes to listen to on television. And I said, Mom, I just want to let you know that you're not getting the full picture,
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of the anxiety that you're feeling and the emotions that you're getting, it's intentional.
Yeah.
And that if just allow yourself to think of a more fuller picture of um, who young black men are. Are they
Mm-hmm.
criminals? Very
Mm-hmm.
often, because she lives in Brooklyn still,
Mm-hmm.
she says that as an elderly person, she's often afraid to go out of her home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that I know it comes from a lot of the images that you hear, but Brooklyn is not a place, it's still a residential borough.
Right.
And I don't believe that you need to be fearful
Mm-hmm.
to leave your home.
Yeah. Yeah.
But of course, if that's the only story that you hear,
Mm-hmm.
I put on 15 minutes of the local news, and the first 15 minutes are 8 different stories of crime and hardship and this and that.
Yeah.
It's so depressing. I tell Mom that for me personally, I need to guard my mental health.
Right. Right.
And one of the ways that I do that is by not looking at things like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I totally get that. I'm gonna do a yes and on that. Um, on that idea though of not not consuming the news or things like that for that reason, right? I agree, and I do feel an obligation sometimes to listen because I want to be in a position to challenge what is being said. And if I don't know what is being said, then I can't challenge it, right? So,
Mm.
like because I've been so busy, I haven't been able to consume a lot of the news, and I feel like I'm at a disadvantage because, and even with this podcast, I'm like, there are um, some uh, injustices that have been going on, and I don't feel knowledgeable enough to talk about them because I haven't been listening to the news. And that type of stuff bothers me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
You want to be that crusader?
I want to be, because I'm in spaces again, like we're talking about. I'm in spaces where I have opportunities to
Mm-hmm.
talk about this and to share my opinions and share my perspectives and maybe change people's minds. And when I don't know, or when I don't bring it up, then it's not brought up, right? And that's a part of, I think, um what I'm here to do, and why I have the diverse friend groups that I have, is to be able to bring certain points of view, certain um uh to shape in a way my friends' opinions about what they're hearing in the
Mm-hmm.
news.
So you need that exposure.
So I need that exposure to
Yeah.
say, you might have heard that, but if you widen the view, here's what else was going on, or here's why, here's how I am going to help you to change the single story, because here's what else happened,
Mm-hmm.
that you might not have been exposed to. And so, but the other thing I'll say is that, um, even with that sense of responsibility that I have, I do need to guard my mental health
And
because
that's
it is
just what I
a
was going to
lot.
say.
It
Very
is a
often, I
lot.
need to back down from that for that
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
You know how I remember, I know in church, our pastor would say, you always have to mind your ear gate.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um, be careful what you allow into your head, into
Mm-hmm.
your spirit,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I can be a very sensitive person.
Yeah.
Some things stay with me,
Mm.
and it's hard for me to forget or
Yeah.
let go of it. Or
Yeah.
sometimes I feel I'm too empathetic.
Right. Right.
And for that reason, I don't want certain things in my head,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so I'll leave the room,
Yeah.
or, close the door, or I don't want to listen to stories about other people's pain sometimes,
Right. Right.
because
Right.
Lord knows I have enough of my own. I have enough of my own, so it takes a lot of strength to be able to be a crusader in that regard sometime,
Yeah. It
and
does. It
sometimes I just
does.
step back and I'm like, Ange got this. Ange
Oh,
got
that's
this. Go ahead, sister girl.
that's what you do. Okay. All
Yeah,
right. That's all
yeah.
right. That's okay. You go do your thing. I got this over here.
But
Um,
um, but yeah, we're gonna wrap up.
Already? It's time? Anyway, Les, listen, let me just tell you. I know we've been really busy, but you are such an important person, part, um, necessity in my life.
Oh boy, do
And,
I need to start getting weepy now?
listen, I haven't done this in a while, but it's just hitting me now that you're so important to me, to so many people, but I care about me right now. You're so important to me, and I'm so happy to be doing this with you. It brings so much joy, and we talk about going away together, and that's going to be amazing. But just this time together, where we are being of service, that is what the podcast adds to our conversations, right? Because we talk about this all the time. Folks, this is not new to us. This type of conversation is typical.
It's true.
Typical.
At midnight sometime.
Trust, okay? But what makes it even more special is that we are being of service to others through this, and doing this with you is one of the joys of my life. So I just wanted to
Thank you
say
for
that
saying that.
out loud. Yeah.
I started to get a little misty, but
Oh boy. Mm-mm-mm.
you know.
Mm-mm-mm. Yeah. All right. So let's bring it in for a landing.
Yes. Thank you for listening to another episode of Black Boomer Besties from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. See you next time in episode in season 3. Love you guys. Bye.